Welcome to Something to Talk About, where I take all this gear that I've collected over the years and I do something with it. And there's nothing better to do than to have a conversation with someone. And I'm joined today, live to air, with Will Bouma, the MPP of Brantford Brant. Introduce yourself, Will.
Hi, Rob, and everyone listening today. My name is Will Bouma, and I'm the MPP for Brantford Brant.
You know, you just answered a question right there, how to properly say your last name. I've been butchering it all this time, haven't I?
It's never bothered me.
Wow.
Bouma. In high school, I was the big boom,
I like.
but we grew up with Bouma. Yes, sir.
And do you go Will or Willem?
I'm totally comfortable with either. Willem has always confused people what that means, and so I just thought it was much simpler to go with Will on the campaign signs and everything else. And
Well,
people are
now
good
you've
with that.
intrigued me. So what does Willem mean?
Resolution or helmet, because of course, William, Wilhelmus, Guillermo, in French, Guillaume
Guillaume, oui.
are all from the same root. So,
Really?
yeah,
So if you were French, you would have been called Guillaume?
probably.
Wow, that's fascinating, actually. You know, it's those small little things that I never think about. Now, you're a fairly tall guy, and we were just joking that I had Doug Hunt here with his stilts, and I didn't know how he fit in. Welcome to the basement is a wonderful cold Saturday morning, and
Absolutely.
as we talked about, this is not going to be a political chat. For the few people that may be listening to this live, we're not going to be taking any political questions or anything like that. This is kind of like a getting to know type of chat, and there's a few aspects, obviously, that I know of you because we've obviously crossed paths on a few occasions, and you're already being loved by the cat, which
Absolutely.
is one of the perks of doing this here versus somewhere else. You are a volunteer firefighter.
Yes, sir.
Okay, you actually, when you walked in here and I told you to turn off part of your gear, one of the things that I never saw on that table, it would be the emergency,
Yeah, my pager.
your pager. So that's more than a pager.
Yeah.
So what does that mean, being a volunteer firefighter? Because I have a bit of roots there, but I don't have the knowledge.
Well, going back to high school, when I was thinking about what I wanted to do, I thought firefighting would be really great. Our hoof trimmer on the dairy farm, believe it or not, cows get pedicures, and he was a full-time captain in the city of London, and he said, you know what, you're a big guy, and I think you could do really well at this. And so I was all gung ho, and it was my brother who said, you know what, I think that's a great path, but I want you to go to university first. And back then, I used to listen to my brother more than I listened to my parents. And then I fell in love with helping people see better. But the firefighting thing was always in the background. Even in the States, I put in an application for a volunteer department. And then we got here, and I just did it on a whim. And then a year later, the district chief for our area, or the deputy district chief at the time, he stopped in and said, we'd like you. And I said, how come? I got a lot of things going on. And it had kind of faded into the background. And he said, well, you know what? You have a unique position. You live here and you work here. And that's, you need people available. And that's the difficulty in volunteer firefighting. And yet it's an extremely cost-effective way of helping people out. Most people in the county of Brant, I don't think, even realize that they have a full-time volunteer force that is carrying this equipment around and ready to respond whenever it goes off. And it's and so you serve your community, and that's just where it kind of ends up. And I firmly believe that 99% of life is just showing up for things. People could trust you to know what you're doing when you're trained for it, but it's being there when people need you, and that's how volunteer firefighting works out. And I had a chat with the integrity commissioner of all things when I won the election, and he said, no, absolutely, you can continue to do that. No problem. And it's still really great to be out with the guys, out with the community. It's so real. It's and not to say that the political life is not real, but it's just on the ground, really working with the people that you know. I think the thing that makes it difficult often is the fact that, and the guys have said that before, do you know everyone in town? And because of my work as an optometrist, I know a lot of people in town, and so when the red trucks are out in front of your house, and hats off to everyone that does that, city, county, Six Nations, you're there when people need you most, and they're often having the worst day of your life, and you're really your only job is to make that really bad day a little bit better. And and it solidified a lot of things in my life about what my purpose is, and I still feel really great about that, and it's a great thing to be a part of.
Yeah, the when I was interviewing Randy Papel, who basically was 40 years as a
Yeah.
paramedic, right? You know, these are not the people that you want to see on a regular basis.
No.
It was police, fire, and ambulance. You want them there when you need them there.
Yes.
And I was interviewing the colonel for the brigade that's based out of Toronto,
Hmm.
and I brought up the Toronto Mallasman snow removal because that would have been his battalion that was brought in, and and we were talking about it's like there were major arteries of the city that were blocked that impeded firefighters,
Yeah.
police, and ambulance. Just to remove those arteries, was important.
Yep.
A lot of people thought it was, for the casual driver there. It's like, no,
No.
there are key things that first responders need to do, and that is mobility
Yeah.
among anything, and speed.
Yeah.
Now, how does that work? Is it a pure volunteer force? Is it a partial force? Like going back to the conversation I did a recent about the reserves versus primary for the
Right.
armed forces. So how does that work in Brant County?
So we have some full-time staff in Paris and fire prevention officers, a chief, deputy chief, some administrative staff, and but then everything at the local level, there's a district chief, a deputy district chief, captains, and firefighters, and all of those positions are volunteer. So the headquarters is in Paris over at the main station number 1 there on Dundas Street. And then, but everyone else who responds in a fire truck is a volunteer. They dropped what they were doing. Their employers are amenable to them doing that, or they're farmers, and you stop what you're doing and you get in your car and go to the fire hall and respond.
Now, I'm assuming there's some form of escalation. It's not necessarily always an all hands on deck, I would assume. Like there's probably a primary response team maybe, and then as the fire is like, how does
Hmm.
that scale?
So Paris splits it into two. They have a large force, and so it depends what it is,
Hmm.
and then it also depends on time of day. So you get a really good sense in your mind who's going to be there and who's not. We usually have a pretty good idea who's working out of town, and we keep a board in front of the fire trucks that says who's away, and you put your name on it. And so depending on what's going on, you might get 3, 4 people, and you might get everyone out, and people will respond differently too. Yesterday morning, I was busy seeing patients, and there was a false alarm at in the industrial subdivision near St. George, and we had enough guys to take care of that, so I knew I could continue doing what I was doing.
Hmm. Hmm. And obviously, when you're in session, you're at Queen's Park, and that
Yes.
obviously changes a few things as well. You're
Well, and I've had conversations with the team about that, and just said, obviously someone else that could be around here more might be more effective for you. And I was basically told that there was not a chance that I was going to be allowed to get out of it that easily. So
Well, to your point, there's passion there clearly,
yeah,
okay, and you never deny passion.
right,
Like you may not like people, you may not appreciate this, but you never deny passion
right,
because that's a core engagement factor that you can't replace.
right.
You are still a resident of St. George.
Yes, sir.
You are here. Well, when you're not in session, you're here, and I
Yep,
believe the Friday, Saturday, Sundays for the most part,
yep.
you're here. Is
Well,
that the same structure still?
yep. And I've come home every night but one.
Really?
And so, yeah, no, that's a priority for me. My youngest is 10, my oldest is 19 in college, and the next one's in grade 12. And so the kids are there, and it's a job that really separates you.
Mm.
And talking to some of my colleagues, it's very, very difficult on family. And I'm so lucky that I can actually make the commute. It's
Yeah.
tough. It's 2 hours. I drive to Aldershot, take the train every day, and yet at 8:30, if I'm lucky when I get home, that's then. But if I was in Toronto right now, what would I be doing? And I'd rather be home and in my community, and then that makes me available to respond again too, depending on what's going on. But I feel that tie to the community really, really well. A lot of my friends, a lot of the people that I know, from the north, further east, further west, they don't have the ability to do that, and they live in Toronto during the week. But I've kind of reserved that just in case of an emergency, or if we have a really, really late meeting,
Yeah.
or it becomes impossible to come home for
Well,
weather.
there are times when you go into late night sessions. There are times
Yep.
when the weather is just stupid, like the last time we were supposed to do this.
Yes.
You do not want to drive on days like those. And I'll be honest, one of the things I love about what I get to do is, for the most part, I do it virtually, right?
Yep.
So I've always said one of the best benefits of Brantford, and it might just be for me, but I think it applies to a lot of people, is everything that you can do in a metropolitan city you can do it in a basement in Brantford remotely.
Yeah,
And, I've had clients, as we talked about, as far away as Australia, and it's
yeah.
like, the savings on that. But the biggest thing is I never want to commute again. I was so done commuting. It's
Well, and that's been the biggest adjustment.
Yeah.
For 11 years, I ran my optometry practice out of my house, and so it was as simple as going from the living room into the front, and then I saw patients, and now we live about 100 meters away, and we moved around the corner and rebuilt the practice in preparation for this if it happened, and now it's 2 hours one way and 2 hours back. But I really love the Go system, and I still dream about expanding that further, but right now it's not cost effective. But the ability to get down to Aldershot and take the train and count on that too. I think our first snowstorm in November, I stayed an hour longer and then communicated with people on their way home yet. And I was in my car on Highway 5 and everyone else was still in Mississauga. So it's it's a really great system. And I think, especially with the traffic, I couldn't imagine doing it any other way.
No, it's and to your point, getting it obviously to Brantford, you need a certain amount of traffic to validate a certain cost like that.
Yeah.
But I've always said the Aldershot parking lot, the biggest priority is that needs to be huge.
Yes.
That is now a major artery for anything past that, and
Yeah.
all the way to us, and then probably even further.
No, absolutely.
I wouldn't be surprised if Woodstock people are constantly using that as well.
I think so. I
Like
really do believe that.
So I've always really thought, if you're going to do that, this is where, that money needs to be first and foremost. Because the last thing, like there was a period of time when I was taking the Go, the amount of parking tickets I had to endure just because there was no parking.
Yes.
It's like, I'm going to have to park it here because there's the train.
Well, and it grounds you because
Yeah.
there's so many people that do that every day, and just the fact that I've posted a few videos from the train, and the response that I get from people on social media about being able to do that is it brings it back to normal, and I am a commuter to Toronto right now, just like anyone else, and I love the connection, the stuff that really connects me to the community. I love someone calls and just wants to have a meeting. I love seeing my patients because there's a whole to me, my worldview of service. I always I remember my former boss and colleague and mentor said, we have the greatest job in the world. He says, so many people I know are in middle or upper management. They're squeezed from above and they're squeezed from below. And he says, I bike to work. I hang out with my friends all day. They give me money and I go home. And that's how I looked at optometry. But what really fused all that was actually being on the fire department, because again, as I said earlier, when you're at someone's house with the trucks, it's the worst day of their life. All you have to do is show up and make that day a little bit better. And that kind of, and then I took a Ritz-Carlton course through at one of my educational sessions, and just that idea of the small things, holding the door for someone, being pleasant, trying to keep a smile on your face, and those little things are what make the difference in our daily lives. And I tell my kids that all the time. If you ever think, oh, this is a big deal, what Dad's doing right now, you know what? It's just more of that little stuff, being pleasant and all those things. And I screw that up every day, and because you get short and you're trying to get somewhere, and your schedule gets messed up. I don't do well with that at all. And but just that idea of whose day can I make a little bit better today? And can I do that more than just one person? Can I try to? My goal is can I do that with every single person that I see today? And that's obviously not always possible because people react differently to things that you do. And yet at the same time, it's not the big stuff. It's the small stuff. It's holding the door. It's helping someone with their groceries, getting out of the grocery store, and those are the things that bring me the most satisfaction. And that's kind of how I got into this stuff now where I'm at.
Yeah, well, one of the photos I saw you recently, and it's actually tied to a previous episode that we did a full interview with the Healthy Harvest Box.
Oh yeah.
Okay, so Jason posted a picture of you there that day on delivery day.
Yeah.
Helping out, and it's like, yeah, I didn't expect you to be there, but I expected you to be there. It wasn't a shock to see you there, if you follow my gist.
Yeah, no, and that's the kind of stuff that I really, really get excited about, because there's someone who's making a business work, and that a social enterprise. I don't know if you call it that.
Oh, it is definitely a social enterprise.
But
yes.
just the fact that and that's where I really see, government's role is to create opportunities for people to serve, to make a living, and to help other people. And then, our role is not to necessarily do that program because, I think it was Ronald Reagan said the scariest words in the English language are, "I'm from the government and I'm here to help." And but our role is to enable people to do those things and to reach out and then, let people pursue those dreams of public service. And when I like Jason's program there and that whole thing, local food and to
As much
local
as we
people.
can,
Yeah,
as much,
well,
yeah, as much as
absolutely.
possible.
You know, but where they can get it and they can do it effectively and provide a service that people buy into because they want to buy local to the best of their ability, and to be able to deliver that door to door and then have enough left over to be able to help other people in different parts who don't have access to those things
Hmm.
normally. To me, that's just such a brilliant program. It's really exciting to be there.
I've been fortunate to obviously have a lot of back view of that project.
Okay.
So when we were mapping out it's actually a Smashing Pixels website. So you
Really?
know Trevor.
Okay.
So I actually helped out with the commerce part of that system.
Yeah.
So it's a passion project for a lot of us.
Yeah.
And one of the biggest things that we were talking about was when a person comes through that process, it's not like the old program where it was just for food bank recipients, let's
Yeah.
say. This is for everybody.
Yeah.
The quality of the food, the diversity of the food, but also when we were mapping it all out, because like I said, there's about 100 product variations in the back end, and I'm being techie for 2 seconds
Yeah.
here, but they were all geared to also being able to make people, how do I upsell that transaction? Can I get a little
Yeah.
bit more of a donation? Can I get the ability to purchase this for someone else other than me?
Yeah.
And the first ever purchase, I don't know if Jason told you this, but
No.
it's perfect. The first ever purchase on that site, and it was within an hour or so of it going live. So we were all like, is this going to work, right? Like you're talking months and months and months
Yep.
of prep work on something like this. And the first one was a girl from Nova Scotia
Really?
whose parents live in Brantford, and she wanted to make sure that her parents for the next 3 months received a healthy harvest
Yep.
box. She bought it in Halifax.
Yep.
It went online. It was in the system, and it got delivered and bundled by you that day.
Yep.
And that was the first ever order. And it's like the old system or the old model would have been, who's knocking at my door right now?
Yeah.
And it just opened it wide up. So it's one of those, that's a social business, social
Yep.
enterprise, all that when I first heard about it, I was like, I was all in on helping out on that one. That was,
Well, I got a new one for you.
yeah, go for it.
And Fausto Victorio?
Yeah.
And so Fausto was in my office the other day. And so I guess this is a shameless plug, but
No,
just
no,
the
no.
concept of this idea where, you know, temp agencies have a bad rap in our community, and there's a whole bunch of reasons for that, and I won't get into that. But the fact that him and a bunch of other people want to start a business, an employment agency, where we take people and get them into some sort of work. But then part of that is you sign up for training on your lunch hours. I forget if it's 2, 3, or 4 days a week. Fausto can talk to you about that, where not only do they get people into a work experience, but they're also training them on a regular basis to give them those other skills so that they can get into better full-time work. And because, something that I've really seen over the last 8 months is there's so many employers that are looking for good people. And so we have so many people looking for good workers, and yet we have so many people who are not working. And to make that connection better, and so I'm really excited about the potential for what they're hoping to do with that one, and yet in a model where, there's no taxes going into the system.
Mhm.
This is just people working to make other people's lives better.
A proper community.
Yeah,
Imagine that.
I know it's
I know.
and so those things I get really, really excited about.
Well, it's like this setup here. I've reached out to other people in the area. It's like, use my gear. Come on over, use it.
Yeah.
That this is Brantford.
Yeah.
That there's certain, and I'm not from Brantford. You're not from Brantford, but there's certain things in Brantford in the general area that change a person.
Well, and we talked a little bit about that in the preview, but just even how politics gets done here and the collegiality that I've seen, and you take it for granted, the fact that we're not at each other's throats all the time. And even the city and the county, the two new mayors have, from what I've seen, a very good
Stellar
working
relationship so far.
And the fact that we can work on things together. And just even, my predecessor, Dave Levac, and his relationship with Phil McColeman, and that, that friendship, working together, even though they weren't on the same political page
Mhm.
always, it's something that it's a really great to be a part of that. And what I've realized now is that we are so far out of the norm.
Mhm.
And just the fact that, Dave always said we live in the greatest place in the world to live, work, play, and raise a family. But in so many parts,
He stole that from Walter.
oh, did he?
He stole that from Walter.
Oh, I never knew exactly
That
where
that
that came
that's
from.
that's a Walter Gretzky one.
Yeah, well,
We are the center of the universe.
Walter got it right,
Oh
and
yeah.
and there's a lot of people that made that special. When I grew up as a Dutch immigrant kid, I think 30 years later, we were still the newcomers,
Mm.
and after now, what is it, 2006? So 13 years in this area. It's like you've been here your whole life. It's this community is my kid's hometown,
Mhm.
and the connections that we have with the river
Mm.
and the city and the county, how things go together in Six Nations, and the credit is is I think very, very, very good. We have a lot of work to do,
Mhm.
obviously, and
Oh
there's a
god, yeah.
lot of problems. I mean, um, there's a lot of problems, and all you have to do is talk to anyone to hear about those things. But the bones of this community and the social network that exists here is stunning, and it's such a great thing to be a part of this way, to serve this way.
Yeah, I do find that there are, for lack of a better term, petty elements, if you will,
Yeah,
or people with long-standing grudges and whatnot, and they represent a good chunk of the verbal diarrhea that we get on a daily
oh
basis,
yeah,
because that's how it works. But there is a lot of people that, at the end of the day, like you and me, totally different political stripes. I don't have any, you know what I mean? So it's hard to, but but yet I'm fortunate enough to have had Dave Levac in the hobo shack in the backyard.
yeah.
I've got you in the basement. You don't get stuff like that in a Toronto,
No,
or it's possible. Don't get me wrong,
no,
but not at
yeah.
that same level of casualness. I find,
Yeah,
you
and
know,
I think we set a model that a lot of places could
yeah,
look for, and that's not to put them down. There's lots of reasons for why those things are the way they are, but the community is a fantastic place to
yeah.
be.
Well, and see, that's the one thing. Like I said, I've been fortunate enough to bump into you on a few occasions, and I've seen you, step into Dave's shoes, and the entire process. But before I get into that, the growing up Dutch,
Yeah,
I'm fascinated by it, just because I don't have enough knowledge about it. And having grown up in the military, or, obviously the Netherlands and Dutch and all that is constantly there.
yeah,
Spending a better part of my years in Ottawa, I'm constantly surrounded by the tulip festivals, right? So I've always been exposed to it, but I've never really gotten a good sense of it. And I'd love to hear it from you.
okay.
And be as verbose as you want, as you well know.
My parents made the decision because they saw the opportunity that this country had to offer in 1976 to immigrate. I was 3.5, almost 4 years old. And my first memory of Canada is waking up in a crib at my uncle and aunt's house. And I remember my first thought in Canada, my first waking thought was that I'm too big for a crib,
Mm.
and I'm too old for this. But it was so different for us than it was for so many of the immigrants that came in the 50s and 60s, and came with the clothes on their back and very little else. My dad sold his farm in the Netherlands and bought a farm here, but um, we I don't remember not being Canadian, and yeah, you heard a few things and things like that, but it was always a sense of, this is what makes this country so incredible, is the fact that you can be extremely proud of where you've come from, and yet you're even more proud of the fact that you're a Canadian,
Mm.
and the relationship between the Netherlands and Canada is extremely special. Um, just because the Netherlands was liberated by the Canadians for the most part in the Second World War, and I think it was my father. It may have been my grade school principal, but because they were the same age. But just the memories of getting to ride in a Canadian tank, and the fact that it was freedom, and
Mm.
the Canadians brought that freedom. My grandfather on my mother's side, hid Canadian pilots who had been downed, and it wasn't made much of, but just that connection that we felt with Canada always had a special place in our hearts, and even just my parents felt very strongly about that respect that we would have for soldiers. My dad did his mandatory 2 years
Mm.
in the Dutch Army when he was a kid, and but and I remember once. being outside of it when I was in the States going to school, getting something at an electronics store, and I saw the World War II veteran uh, emblem on this guy's license plate. So as he was walking in, as the store opened, I just said to him, "Thank you, sir." And he turned around, like, looked at me like I had three heads, and what on earth are you talking about? I said, "I couldn't help but notice your license plate, and I just wanted to thank you because my grandparents were liberated by people like you," and that guy burst into tears. And I remember him saying, "It's been 60 years, and no one has ever said that to me," and and that's why when I got here, and I forget who it was, but that's how we met. Actually, was getting involved with the Thank a Vet luncheon,
Hmm.
and so that connection between Canada, the United States, or Canada and the Netherlands is very, very important to me. I got to meet the King and Queen of the Netherlands a few years ago as an immigrant. You could sign up on Facebook, and I guess I won a ticket. But they were here to celebrate the 70th anniversary of the liberation of the Netherlands at the time, and they still take that very seriously. Dutch people in the Netherlands revere the Canadian war graves, and they take them very careful take that very seriously. And that's, if you want to, we can talk about that too. Recently I wrote a letter of support, and I can't remember the gentleman's name, but there's a medal that the Dutch government gives, and this is a great opportunity to talk about um, to every Canadian or their family, their veteran who fought in the liberation of the Netherlands, and he's made it his personal goal to try to get that medal into the hands of every living or the family member of every veteran who served in the Netherlands. And I just think that's a great opportunity. And I was talking about it with Phil McColman yesterday, and that was his first experience with our new Veterans Affairs Minister, and she's all on board. So I'm really looking forward to seeing what we can do with this to track down these men who are still around and their family members to try to honor them in this way. And that's a really big personal deal for me.
Hmm. Well, as you say, a lot of what we do at the luncheon is all about that honoring and
Yeah.
whatnot, and there's a lot of layers and emotions every year with that luncheon as
Oh
well.
yeah. There's I never get through the Think of It luncheon with having tears in my eyes at
Yeah.
least once.
Yeah, it's going back to that rooted thing. It's one of those things that reminds you and roots you, and just kind of resets a few things quite easily.
Yeah.
It's quite nice. Grew up on a dairy farm, I would
Dairy
assume.
farm.
So a lot of dairy farmers that in the Dutch community in the area. Or
Yeah.
is that the case, or is that just an observation?
No, it's to me it's just in my blood,
Mm,
and but a lot of people came from farming backgrounds and settled down here, and a lot of the more recent immigrants, they saw opportunities here in the dairy industry. But there's a lot of other Dutch immigrants who were never connected to farming at
mm,
all.
mm.
But it seems that Holsteins, we call them Holstein Friesians, are in our blood, and the Holstein Association is right here in
It
town.
is, yeah.
And I know people that work there, but that connection with the land, with the agriculture that way. My younger brother's still on the farm. He's building a new barn right now, and yeah, yeah, it seems to be definitely in my family's blood. I think we've someone's done the historiography, and on both sides, my family were people of the land,
Mhm.
as in for since time immemorial, as Ava Hill would
Yeah.
say.
And when you're dealing with, let's say Six Nations and you credit, obviously that's a common point,
Yeah.
that connection to the land. How does that play out?
Well, what's really interesting is that the first Europeans who met the Six Nations, the Mohawks, were Dutch people in what is now New York and New Amsterdam. And that's actually where the idea of the two-row wampum came from. And what's interesting is going through this learning process over the last 8 months and learning those connections, because I never had that before. I never really delved into that. I was honestly too busy with other things. But now I represent people there, and I want to see that
Mm.
connection. And I learn a lot better in pictures than I do with words, honestly, and the stories. And when I almost failed anatomy, but when I took physiology, it all made sense,
Mm.
because
Mm.
physiology is the story that connects the anatomy and how it all functions together. And just at Six Nations Polytech, Raymond Sky did a beautiful job on some murals
Oh,
there.
the new murals. Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
and they tell the story pictorially of the story of European people and the connection with the indigenous people, and that idea, and that's why I love the river,
Mm.
because the idea of two groups of people um, coming together and moving in the same direction in perpetuity, and he does it so well in there, because then all of a sudden you hit a spot where the belt is broken
Mm.
and the beads are spilled. And what I was so excited about being at the Muslim Association for their awards ceremony, I think it was last Saturday, was the fact, and that's what I said there too, was that here you have another group of people, another nation
Mm-hmm.
coming together, and the work that's being done there is to stitch the belt back together
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
so that we can move forward in that. And that's,
Well, and I believe Ava was there as well for
oh
that
yeah,
event. Yeah,
Ava was there, and someone from Six Nations was honored for their work at the institute at the Woodland Cultural Center. And if anyone hasn't done that, you have to go see Carly, Mike, and the staff at the Woodland Cultural Center, and do the 3 or 4 hour
yeah.
tour like I did, because it'll change your life, honestly. And so being connected to the land that way, um, it, it it gets me at a very deep level,
Mm.
and so it's really opened my mind up to a lot of different thoughts that I never had before, and I'm really appreciating that part of this.
Yeah, there's as you say, the connection to the land. There's a certain work ethics, obviously, that comes out of farming as well. Never met. I'll be very generic here. I've never met a lazy Dutch farmer.
Maybe that's why I'm not a farmer.
Yeah, good. But you are an optometrist, so that is actually a nice segue right there.
Yeah,
You always have some of the nicest eyewear.
thank you. My
Yeah,
wife picks those out,
yeah.
and because I just have to look through them. But so when I was in high school then, my brother said go to university, and I wanted to do something medical, and I remember the feeling. And if you do, you remember the feeling putting on a pair of glasses for the first
Mm-hmm.
time and being able to see.
Yep.
I remember driving home with my dad.
Grade 6, by the way.
Okay, yeah, I think I was a bit younger because I'd been complaining for a while,
Mm.
and just saying, Dad, all the leaves on the trees and the grass, it all has blades on it, and it had been just a blur for a while. I don't remember how long. And so when I was contemplating what I wanted to do for a living, if I was going to be a medical professional, I thought to be able to give that gift to other people. And for me, the most two most greatest moments ever was when I was training in Michigan, and I was at the Saginaw Valley Special Needs Vision Institute, and there was a little girl, and she was very young and a little bit developmentally delayed, and she'd been seen 6 months previously by someone else, and kids wiggle and stuff, so it wasn't anything there. But I all of a sudden I picked up that this girl was extremely nearsighted, and which means that you just don't see far away.
Mm-hmm.
And she was nearsighted enough; she probably couldn't see well past the end of her nose. And so Dr. Kowalski put some lenses in these little baby trial frames, and it looked extremely cute. And it was interesting because she was playing with something close to her face, and we put those glasses on her, and she dropped what she was doing
Because she saw everything else.
and just looked around the room.
Yeah.
And I'm like, yes, like
Yeah.
this is what I'm here for. And the other time was on a mission trip when I was in optometry school, and I went to a little island called Dominica, which is beautiful, by the way, in the Caribbean. It's not the Dominican Republic; it's Dominica, and we called her Matilda -22 because this lady had lost her glasses years before and was effectively blind. And -22, like that, really is like she couldn't even see the end of her nose.
Wow.
It was that close, and we actually had a pair of glasses close to her prescription, and 75, 80-year-old lady, and we put those glasses on her, and the feeling of her being able to see the world again somewhat clearly. You just you ever have that sense like
Mm-hmm.
I'm doing exactly what I'm supposed to be doing exactly when I'm supposed to be doing it, and that was one of those moments, and that's I we do little miracles every day,
Mm-hmm.
with a little bit of plastic and some lenses and some frames, a little bit of metal, and you improve people's lives on a daily basis.
For the better part of the last 5 years, These are the progressives, you
Yeah.
know, and this
Oh, I'm there.
was an investment, to say the least. This is a 10-year investment in my career. I was hampered work wise.
Yeah.
Because I would literally, and you're an optometrist, you're going to hate hearing this, but whatever. I would put reading glasses over my normal
Yeah.
glasses. Okay, I was making my own bifocals,
Right.
basically, right? And it was getting horrible. But more importantly, a few years back, I started shifting what I worked on.
Yep.
So I opted to remove my glasses
Hmm.
entirely, and I lived with the blur,
Yep.
which was I felt that my eyes all of a sudden were not stressing because I was obviously trying to compensate for
Yeah.
a lot of things. So I was not as tired and da da da. But then all of a sudden I started doing things that required me to be really close, very much that nearsighted
Yeah.
feeling, right? Working on the car, where you're literally inches away from the
Yep.
bolt and you can see it. I can see the detail. I can see, and I'm there, like just like this mic. You know what
Right.
I mean? It's that same type of feeling. You're that close. And when I got these progressives, like I won't lie that the last year since I got this progressive has had a financial impact on my life
Yeah.
positively,
Yeah.
because of the amount of stuff that I can do because of that vision. I've always been fearful because like, what do you of your senses? What would you lose if you
Hmm.
had to? You know, if you had to lose something, you know, the old thing. Like for me, audio is important, clearly, you
Yep.
know, but I would be incapable of doing what I do professionally without vision.
Right.
You know what I mean? And I know that because the last few years I was hampered by
Yeah.
real, like the script was a 10-year-old script. So, you know, you can imagine a 40 to 50-year-old change in eyewear.
Yeah.
Okay, you've been there.
I'm there.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Um, and it shifted my mentality to I'm going to live in the moment, if you will. And I
Yeah.
did it visually, if you will.
Yeah.
But I took that at a more of a higher level. And it was some of the best years
Yeah.
of not wearing glasses, having worn, and I can't do contacts anymore. I tried them
No.
again. I can't do them. It's just,
No.
and I used to wear those like I kid you not, 20 hours a day. Like when I was doing the heavy programming and
Yeah.
the heavy, those were in the eyes all the time.
Yep.
You know.
Well, our if I can do a quick optometry plug,
Yeah. Go for it.
our skin changes. I look in the mirror now and I turn my face sideways and everything's kind of hanging a little bit different than it used to, and so many people you even hinted at it. They feel a little guilty because they abused their eyes with these contact
Mm.
lenses when they were younger and now they can't wear them. And I throw that out the window. I said, you know what? Our skin changes, our physiology changes as we get older, and it makes it tougher to
Mm.
do those things. So the reason you could wear them 20 hours a day was because the reason you did wear them 20 hours a day is because you could wear them 20
Yeah.
hours a day. And trust me, because if you couldn't, we would have let you know the next time
Yeah.
you came in. And but it's not even about that so much. It's about just finding the right solution for people,
Mm.
because some people get by great with over-the-counter reading glasses,
Yeah.
and that's fantastic. I'm so glad that those options are there for people. I refer people who have great distance vision and are struggling up close and working in industry. You can go to some of the stores in town and even pick up safety glasses that have
Mm.
a little bifocal piece in them, and they're ready to go. But when you have a prescription that has to be custom made, then it becomes a job of, what's the best option for people. Some people go there, some people go there. And but the treatment and management of those things, and just giving people options and letting them decide is very gratifying. And then, but also accessibility, like you said, to do a good job in a higher prescription, and then if you get transitions, so they auto darken
Mm.
and things like that outside, that's $1,000,
Oh,
$1,200 pair of
well,
glasses.
these are about 15.
And so to be able to do that well, I think, but then to give people options, I'm glad we have a lot of stuff going on. I'm not a big online guy, and because I think it's too difficult to get a lot of those measurements right.
Yeah.
And yet, I've said to people too, you think that when I go on a mission trip, and I've done too, and I hand someone a pair of glasses that we've brought with us, you think those measurements are right? And so it depends on where you're at
Mm-hmm.
and what your needs are. And
But an incremental change could be a life change too.
oh,
You know, you
absolutely.
don't need to your point about reading glasses, you get a little 2.0 or 1.5 or
Yeah.
whatnot, and you're turning 40. And I've seen this real estate guy.
Yep.
The guy forgot his reading glasses. He picked them up. It's like, oh my god, I can actually see this. And it's like, yeah, you're at that age. I'm sorry.
Yes,
You
and
know.
it's not because you're getting old.
Mm.
It's actually
Oh.
just a growth pattern in the eye
Mm.
that the lens gets a little bit bigger, and the muscles that are attached to it just can't act on it in the same way anymore.
Yeah.
But it sure is associated with aging, that's for
Well,
sure.
I've also, like, my right eye is maybe 20% of my vision. Like, I'm looking at you pretty much with my left eye the entire
Okay.
time, at, like, lazy along for the ride type of thing.
Yep.
So none of the LASIK stuff can be, they wouldn't touch it just because I lose, potentially my sight if I had something happen.
Well,
But that's,
and now if you fixed your distance,
yeah.
what would you do for reading?
Yeah, well, you see, and that's the thing. I actually, going back to, and we're spending way too much time on this, but it's a fun little chat. I gotta say that philosophy of being in the moment, up close, without the glasses
Yeah.
or whatnot, was a whole package.
Yeah.
But like I said, the stuff I'm doing right now, God bless these glasses, because
Yeah.
I wouldn't be able to do it right now.
Well, and when you think about it, and the imam will remind me of that on a regular basis. But lenses were invented by Al Hassan, and he was Muslim,
Mhm.
and just the fact that I can and that connection between peoples that way, about the idea of grinding a piece of melted sand into something you could see through, and then finding out that it had a prescription, and magnifying the magnifying effect, the gifts that we've been given, and today to the point, and then I guess the other question is, what's it worth to you to be able to see like that?
I could literally put a financial factor on it.
Right?
I've got the math in the last year.
So, but no, and I still get really passionate about that. I love seeing my patients.
Now you're doing
Friday mornings.
Friday mornings, because you're
Because
doing the office in the
I do
afternoon.
constituency work in the afternoon, but just so everyone knows who's
Yep.
listening, I got to keep my license up. So I try to do 3-4 hours on a Friday morning. And then when if one of my associates is away from the practice, I think Monday I'm working a few hours. And because I actually need 750 hours over a 3-year period, or averaging out to 250 hours a year of direct clinical patient contact in order to maintain my license. And the only thing that might monkey that up, although I'm not too worried about that, is that if you're actually in cabinet, you can't earn money anywhere else.
Yeah.
And so then I would have to do it for free, which is, well,
Do you still get your hours if you're doing it pro bono?
you still would get your hours.
Okay.
But I'm still working on that. But
Yeah.
I have a vision of doing something. But I have an idea of being able to do something in Brantford pro bono.
Yeah.
And so we're trying to run that through all the people that need to put their approval on that.
Well, I see.
And
It all comes together, doesn't it?
well, there's still a lot of people that fall between the cracks,
Oh,
and
tell me about it.
I've met them. I've helped some of them. I won't get into the stories because I'm not here to do that today. But there's a lot of people who, we think that when someone's on social assistance, everything's taken care of. But when you turn 65, if you're on Ontario Works or ODSP, those benefits disappear, and you're still trying to make ends meet off of those things
At the hardest time of your life.
at the hardest time of your life, when you don't have the option of being able to do anything else anymore. And I've met other people too who have too much, you can call it misplaced self-respect, that they just put up with things. And like, when you consider the impact that having a proper prescription that allows you to see at distance and up close has made in your life, there's a lot of people walking around out there that just make do.
Yeah.
Or that just live with a whole lot of blur and frustration and headaches that keeps them out of being productive at work, at home with their families, being able to enjoy the things that they do. And I really see a need there. So I'm hoping I can get the integrity commissioner to sign off on what I want to do, and then there'll be more. Stay tuned. I probably shouldn't be talking about that yet, but we're just there right now.
Crickets. There's no one listening. But let me just maybe wrap it up on one global topic, because you're a family man.
Yeah.
And something that both Dave and Walter and a lot of other people, great place to bring up a family in this area, right? Tell me about Brantford Brant, from your family experience, and this is the tourism plug, for the lack of a better term. Tell me about Brantford from your eyes.
Well,
Or when I say Brantford,
absolutely, we are the hub of Ontario trails. Actually, every major trails comes through here. You can go north to Cambridge, Kitchener, Waterloo on trails that are here. You can go south to the lake. You go south a little bit, and you can go west from here, and you can go to Hamilton. So I've always been very passionate about that, and which is why I got on the Brant Waterways Foundation to connect people. I've been working with Not so much lately, but the idea, the concept of again, and for me, it's the big picture of being able to connect to the river and that flowing together. But imagine being able to hike, bike, walk, kayak, canoe from the headwaters to the mouth. And there's a group, um, I think they're called the Grand Trail Network. We called it at one time. But to be able to connect all those things through all those municipalities from all the way through, and there's a significant tourism aspect to that too. You ask some people in certain places that are tired of that, and yet I know in my time on county council to make those connections because it's such a huge driver.
Mm.
There are people that come here that use some of the hotels, and they do biking trips at the right time of the year, taking advantage of that. But then we have so many other things. There's definitely a truth to if you build it, they will come. We have the Wayne Gretzky Center. We have the Twin Pad in Paris, and the ability to enjoy those things. I think those things are really, really important. I think when an executive makes the decision about what he wants to do or she wants to do with her business, I think they think about those things like, where's my kid going to play hockey or swim, and those things. And people before me and you have done a great job of building a lot of that infrastructure, and I think those are key drivers to growth and to build a great place. And but we live in an incredible community. All you have to do is have a look at the Nith River in Paris in the fall.
Mm.
Take that walk, that river loop there. Dixon Park, which most people don't know about. That's my hidden gem, by the way, where I like to go just through Glen Morris, a little bit further west on that road, across past Pinehurst Conservation Area, Pinehurst,
Mm.
the Brant Conservation Area, and that connection to all those things, Apps Mills,
Mm.
and just all the trails and everything else, all of the great people that do all of the outfitters that do the kayaking and canoeing, and there's some friction there sometimes, but there's very, very few places around that have those connections, that have that ability to enjoy those things. My son fishing at the dam in Paris, and just think about it, the fact that 30, 40 years ago, people took this problem in hand, and because the Grand River was, from what I understand from people, essentially dead.
Mm.
And
Well,
he can catch bass in there.
There's a lot of stuff that's being flushed down
Yeah,
that river from upstream.
yeah.
You know.
Challenges that we have. We need to start looking at different technologies for how to deal with our sewage.
Mm.
We definitely have to embrace low impact development. My dream of building a new subdivision for new people to live here, to enjoy what we have, but to be able to build those places that ecologically that subdivision functions the same way as the woodlot that was there 500 years ago.
Mhm.
And those things really mean a lot to me because, again, not politically, but, leave things better than you found them,
Always.
and treat other people the way that you'd want to be treated. And then taking that long view. I love some of the cultures that I've encountered because they really think about those things. They're not so much in the moment. What I love about my Sikh friends is that, their place of worship, we're now like, when we built our new church in St. George as Dutch Reformed people, we wanted it done in 6 months.
Mm.
But there's other cultures that when they build their house of worship, it's okay if it takes 200 years
Mm.
because they see it as much longer than just in this moment. And I really, really appreciate a lot of those things that I've had the opportunity to be exposed to. And so being able to take that long view about, not just where we are right now. I love the connections with some of the farms. I have a friend, Brian Coleman, who's on county council, whose farm has been in their family. It's older than Canada.
Mm.
And when someone else was trying to build a pig barn in Glen Morris, it's there now. And I said, so how long has your family been on the land? Well, I don't know, 1870s or 1880s. And those connections that cross generationally, and I even find that walking around in Toronto, I think it's so neat that people have taken the time and the expense to post some things. This is the area where the Mississaugas were,
Mm-hmm.
the traditional territory, and the fact that where we sit, at Queen's Park, is a traditional gathering place that was there for hundreds of years before that building stood there, and you feel that, or I feel it when I walk through those halls, and it's 125 years old, that building, but to be able to look down and see pictures of people who, how many people remember some of them, and to realize that you're a part of this great moving stream. Again, I guess just the river
Mm-hmm.
of this, the people going through, and you're just a small part of that. And those pieces, I think, are very, very cool. Just to be able to take what we've been given, to try to make some slight improvements to it,
Mm-hmm.
and leave it better for the people that come after you.
I got to say, when I moved here, one of the first ever pictures I took was in the backyard, barefoot on the grass,
Yeah,
because I had not done that I hadn't had a backyard in all my years of Toronto. Like
yeah,
the concrete jungle, as it were, right?
yeah,
And the next thing was walking the trails, which you know where I am relative
yeah,
to the river right now. The trails are a 5-minute walk from here, and
yeah,
they go and go and
go.
go. And I've run those when I could run. My foot won't let me do that anymore, but
Yeah.
I've walked it. I've had chats with myself beyond belief in some of those moments, And
Well, in that that 15K loop on your
yeah,
bike, right?
oh,
You can go right here and go, across at the Lorne Bridge,
yeah,
and around and up through the cemetery and across at the
I know the loop.
yeah, right.
I've
And
done, yeah,
and and that's it's amazing how many people don't know about it,
yeah,
but it's amazing how many people do.
yeah,
And we take those things for granted, how we're connected with it here. But it's such an asset. It's such an ecological asset,
yeah.
but also just such a great people. Oh yeah, no, that's on the other side of the river. It's a divider, but it's also brings people together.
Well, it is a fjord,
Yeah,
or by tradition.
yeah,
So by its very nature, the part of the Grand River that we are residing in, or where the original settlers
hmm,
picked or whatnot, was a bridge.
yeah,
A point, for
yeah,
lack of a better term. And yeah, there is a lot of locally, as you say, if you're in West Brant versus downtown and whatnot. And I've always said, one of the harshest things for a commuter is you're tired, you're almost home, and you're driving through the worst traffic because you're having to go through a funnel through.
yeah.
Okay, yeah, I'm not gonna like downtown Brantford. I'm sorry. It's at my most frustrating point, right? So,
Yeah.
there's all those things that play into that
Right.
division. And yeah, anytime you've got. And we're back, and we were talking about how the Grand River connects everybody. Let's expand a bit on that.
Well, it's become a whole philosophy for me. The idea of many nations moving in the same direction. A 2-row wampum, a 10-row wampum, helping each other, working with each other, and that's envisioned so well in the Grand River. It's the only thing, like, physically, that really connects all the communities that I represent, and it flows from one end right through to the other end. It keeps going. I like the fact that even though we know where the headwaters are, you can't see where it comes from.
Mm,
Not at the edge of where we live, and you can't see where it's going. It flows through, and it says so much about life. And I think in that sense, it connects us. It brings us together, and we're all going down this river you can call life together. And it's what we do with that moment in time where we are. And are you moving in the same direction? Are you working with everyone else? Are you seeking the greater good? And I love that picture. It really speaks to me, and it informs the decisions that I have to make.
hmm going back to the thing you were saying earlier, you're far more of a visual person, and it's just something you look at that, and it instills a story, it instills a belief, it instills an ideology. It's there,
Yeah,
you know.
and that can get lost in the mundane sometimes, but we're also a part of something bigger, and we're not meaningless things. We all have value, and there's 130,000 people that live in this riding, if you want to call it that, and there's 90 something thousand people that can vote. And you know what? I now have the opportunity. It just got a little bigger. I
Mm,
used to have my patients on the fire department. I had my community that way. The Brant Waterways Foundation, it got a little bigger, connecting a little bit more. And then County Council, 37,000 people in the county of Brant. And now it's this whole area that I'm working for. And what I love about it is it's not so much about what I want to do. It's about what's best for the community. And I'll screw up, I promise. There's some people might listen to that and say, yeah. But it's about, how what can we do that's best for everyone, and to build a place that's better than what we left, and welcoming to people that move in like it was welcoming to me.
And see, that's the nice thing is you're rooted back to that, so you haven't necessarily forgotten what it's like to be new to the area,
Yeah.
or what it's meant to be. Let's say a different culture or whatnot. And we brought up the mosque recently, and obviously they had their vandalism recently,
Yeah.
and they're still building bridges after that.
Yeah.
And then that speaks volumes of them as well.
No, and at the end, people are different color, people are different religions, other people don't have religion at all, and yet we're all people. We need food, we need drink, we want a great place to live, to work, to play, and to raise a family. And thanks, Walter, for that one. Then, and that idea is what drives me.
When one of the biggest things, and I love the fact that I could actually hear the cat purring, because,
Really?
oh yeah, this is awesome. What I love about the Walter bit, and I've been fortunate enough to have him, fall asleep in my car, and I've been the one driving him to Toronto, and all of a sudden you hear the snoring in the passenger seat, right? But it's the I always say Wayne is the great one,
Yes.
but Walter is the grateful one. And when you take that gratefulness that he exudes on a day-to-day basis, and let's be honest, the man lives pretty much a Groundhog Day type of, every day he looks at his calendar and he puts on the smile and he goes.
Yeah.
And he comes home and he resets it and he goes back out the next day and he's an energizer bunny for it, right?
Yeah.
But really, at the end of the day, that gratefulness exudes. And I've told him face to face, I didn't know you before your accident. I didn't know you at all. But I know you now, and the gratefulness is huge.
Yeah.
And in many ways, I think the gratefulness is better than the greatness in that sense.
Oh, for sure.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, that's such a great point.
So, anything you want to add as we wind this down?
You know what? I really appreciate the fact that you took the time to invite me out here.
Nah.
We had to reschedule once because of weather, and but just to be able to have a conversation about those things and to be able to share that, the connections are personal, and where I function best is on a personal level. I will never get to meet everyone that I'm working for, and the ability to reach out to a few more people and to express who I am. And, if I can put that at the end, if you have an issue, and it might not be provincial, it might be municipal, it might be federal, it might be personal. Our phone number is 519-759-0361. And the email address is will.bouma@pc.ola.org. And you know what? I work for you. And if you need my help with something, let me know.
And on that note, thank you, sir.
Thank you.